What I want to cover today is I got to give you some background information on what's going on out in the over appropriated and fully appropriated areas, and cover some key issues and kind of cover what's required in an integrated management plan and conjunctive use. Talk a little bit about current Republican NRD projects, and then we'll get to N-CORPE, which is the one you're really interested in, and that's the major land purchase that just occurred. And actually we're closing and taking possession tomorrow on that project. And then I'm going to cover some Platte NRD water management projects, and then we'll get some Q&A. So first of all, I want to cover some Platte River key issues, and on your desk you'll have a little sheet that kind of has this summarized a little bit. All of you are aware we're in a 3-state agreement on the Platte River Recovery and Implementation Program. We have to return to 1997 levels of irrigation by 2019. That's 26,200 acre feet that has to go back to the river by 2019. The key thing here, which ties into the land purchase, is this 7,700 acre feet in the Twin Platte NRD is part of that 2,600. Then the next step for the Platte River is to return it to fully appropriated status rather than over appropriated. And right now our estimates on that are between 114,000 to 229,500 acre feet of water that has to be put back in the river. That's in addition to the 26,000. And here we've got 33,000 to 67,000 estimated in the Twin Platte NRD. And then add on potential second and third increments of 137,500 acre feet each on top of all those other numbers. And so you'll see it on the sheet that I laid on your table. It's close to 500,000 to 600,000 acre feet of water we got to put back in the Platte River. So we got to fully comply with all the targeted goals in the recovery program. Now, we may not have to accomplish all of those. As we move along with that, if we start seeing a lot of gains back for endangered species, some of these flow levels may get lowered, or we may not have to do all of them. But that's what's on the board right now. Republican River key issues. The compact, you all read that Kansas is claiming Nebraska is not doing enough to address water short years. They want up to 300,000 irrigated acres in Nebraska, Republican River Basin shut down. That is what their goal is. And so we'll get to some questions. Will Kansas ever agree to anything we do? Kansas wants 300,000 acres shut down. And so if we're going to do something that Kansas would agree to, that would be it right now. We've gone back to arbitration. We had arbitration up in New England in August of 2012. Decision probably won't come down until 2013. Whoever loses in that arbitration will appeal. And so you'll appeal that decision, and so nothing is probably going to happen until the Supreme Court takes final action. So the decision will probably come out in 2013. If Nebraska loses, we'll appeal. If Kansas loses, they're going to appeal. This water fight's not over. What are our options here for our requirements in the compact? When we get into water short years or dry years, we got to curtail groundwater pumping in an area where 10% the volume pump is depleted from the stream flow within 2 years. It's called the 10% 2. Then you got to make additional reductions in groundwater use versus using voluntary incentive programs to offset a lag effect, about a 1% additional reduction. And then also in water short years, surface water use would be shut down. Those are kind of our options. In looking at that 10% and 2, that's anywhere between 60,000 to 100,000 acres that would have to be shut down. We could also just cut allocations across the board to all groundwater users in that basin low enough every year to where it cover your worst case scenarios or your water short years. Now, that estimated number would be somewhere between 2 to 3 inches per irrigated acre to shut it, give everybody that much allocation, versus what they have today is anywhere between 8 and 13 inches per irrigated acre throughout that entire basin. So the other option is to shut it down, everybody down to 2 to 3. Or we develop projects to offset stream depletions. And that's the direction we're really trying to head, is get these projects developed to offset those depletions, get water back in the river. Here's another key issue that's challenging for us in Nebraska. This was in the Scotts Bluff Star Herald back in August. And you can read that, and it basically gets down to, if we don't take care of the cities, somebody else is going to do it. And so that's our other part of our challenge, is make sure that the cities have the water that they need to supply all of their residents and customers and their manufacturing uses. And so they will be hitting us with demands. And then throw this on top of everything else, is we're in a drought. And I don't need to tell you about that. And it doesn't look like it's going to let go anytime soon. Of course, as my dad always said, when you get into a dry spell, it always rains at the end. So we're looking forward to that. So at the end of the dry spell, I'll guarantee you it will rain. Just don't know when that's going to be. Okay, so let's go talk a little bit about these integrated management plans. Oops, sorry, I hit something here. And these are integrated management plans as required by state law. I don't know why this is jumping on me. Got to sustain a balance between basin water supplies and uses, both groundwater and surface water, i.e. conjunctive use management. You got to sustain the economic viability and environmental and social health, safety, and welfare of the basins, both for near term and long term. And that right there is the key, is sustain the economic viability. Because if we shut everything down, you know what happens to the local economy? It goes down. And here we've got a little map of where our restrictions are, and there's a map for you on the handouts too. That same map, so you can take that with you. What is this conjunctive, the benefits of this really get to? Involves the coordinated use of surface water supplies and storage with groundwater supplies and storage. What we're really trying to get at is use groundwater during dry periods, use surface water during wet periods to recharge groundwater. We got to proactively manage the supplies for recharge and stream flow, reduce the variability of the supply, capture the excess flows, boost supply during shortages, irrigate more efficiently, reduce water supply uncertainty, reduce the non-beneficial ET. We got to look at domestic use benefits and recreational use benefits. The ultimate goal, conjunctive water management will allow Nebraska to return the Platte River to fully appropriated and comply with the Platte River Recovery Program, will also help Nebraska comply with the Republican River Compact. So what's going on right now in the past couple years on trying to achieve compact compliance? For the upper Republican NRD, we've had a couple things happen in the last couple years that really helped out. One is the district purchased about 3,200 irrigated acres, 24 pivots in Dundee County that were retired from irrigation. What's happening with all that, pivots have been taken off, land's been reverted back to grass, but the water's being pumped into Rock Creek to increase Republican River flows. And the amount of water that's being pumped out of there is less than the consumptive use of the crops that were planted on that. That's the key issue there. We can't pump any more than that. So we calculate what the consumptive use was of those crops and then pump less than that amount of water. This shows the area, and just don't have a pointer, but you can see a red line that all those pivots are boxed in, and then there's a red line coming down. That's the pipeline that got buried and pumped into Rock Creek, just above the Game and Parks Rock Creek Fish Hatchery. And then the fish hatchery uses that water, and then it goes on down eventually into the Republican River system. And it increases the flows that go into the reservoirs. So by putting water in those reservoirs, it does a couple things for it. It provides for downstream uses, but it keeps trying to keep those reservoirs up above trigger levels for water short years. As that's one of the calculations that's used in the compact we get into water short years, or what are the levels of the reservoirs. Another thing that they did, they retired about 1,360 acres in that district where pumping has high impacts on stream flow. In other words, they're right next to the stream. And that's where we get our biggest bang for our buck, is when you go in right next to the stream and you retire irrigated acres. At that point, you can get increased flow into those streams. If you get the further away from the stream you get, the less benefit you get out of reducing groundwater pumping, because it doesn't have that large of an impact on stream flows.